Today, we're talking with amazing experts in data-driven B2B marketing.
It's not one decision maker. It's like an average of 12 to 14, according to Forrester Research.
The SaaS model is becoming very popular as well, right? Because it creates more sustainable business.
It's also important to think through the ramp to revenue, but also the users of the products.
Quantitative data has a good margin of error, good confidence interval.
A lot of what we do at Hilti is very much account-based marketing as well.
How can we onboard customers using marketing magic?
Hi, welcome to the B2B Marketing Leaders podcast. And today we're talking with amazing experts in B2B marketing and data-driven B2B marketing as well. So I'll ask you introduce yourself and tell us more about your background and experience. Let's start with Christian, then Dina, then Christy.
Thanks, Olga. Great to be here with you today. Happy to be part of the conversation. Let me talk a little bit about myself and about the company that I work for. I'll start with the company that I work for because it might not be as familiar to all your listeners. Hilti is a 84-year-old family business based in the tiny Principality of Liechtenstein between Switzerland and Austria. So from very humble beginnings, it has grown into a global leader in the construction industry. Today, we employ more than 34,000 employees, generate roughly 6 billion Swiss francs in annual revenue, and operate in more than 100 countries worldwide. What makes Hilti unique isn't just the innovative products, services, and software. It's actually how we deliver those to our customers. And we do this through a direct sales model with field engineers and account managers who work very closely with our customers. As for me personally, I'm responsible then for developing and steering global marketing strategies. I actually started my career as a structural engineer before moving into marketing and strategy. That means a lot of data analysis that we'll talk about today, and then especially using the data to make decisions on how we allocate our resources in the most effective way to add value for our customers. It's definitely going to be a topic today. And over the years, I've worked in different countries around the world, and it's always fascinating to see how different marketing strategies can scale globally and where adaptations are essential. Outside of work, I love spending time with my wife and 2 kids. We live just north of Dallas in Texas. Great to be here.
Great. And I really love your transition from engineering to marketing. I think it's exciting as well. Yeah. So thank you. Thank you.
All right, I'm next. Olga, hi, thank you. It's great to be here. Christian and Christy, it's great to meet you and be speaking with you. I am an executive in global and regional marketing, partner marketing, and go-to-market strategies. I'm also an industry advisor and also a CMA Industry Award winner. I just received the Visionary Award in 2025, second consecutive year. So super excited to be here. This is a critical foundation to everything we are doing in this space. So looking forward to sharing with the community some really critical points and hopefully some tangible takeaways for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Dina, and congratulations on the award. I think it's just amazing. Great. Yeah, thank you.
Hi, I'm Olga and Christian and Dina. It's lovely to be on this podcast today with you all. I'm excited to dive into data. I'm Christy Berg. I'm a purpose-driven marketing executive with deep experience in B2B, SaaS, and enterprise technology. Throughout my career, I've been in high-growth startups to Fortune 100 brands, and really have been focusing with the team on centering our approach on data, but also working backwards from the customer and using customer insights and data to drive actionable insights to both improve pipeline velocity, customer retention, and brand differentiation. Most recently, I led enterprise, public sector, and partner marketing at T-Mobile for Business, where I built and scaled data-driven programs that fueled double-digit growth and expanded into some new strategic markets in public sector. And before that, I've held leadership roles at Google Cloud, Mondi, AWS, and Riverbed, where I scaled both demand generation, field marketing, and go-to-market strategies through our intellectual automation, predictive insights, and brand innovation. And I love the creativity that us as marketers have to tie in data with creativity to focus both connecting data, but also what's the purpose of a customer's pain points and how we can help them.
Great. Thank you. And thanks for sharing your fascinating experience. Yeah, that's just amazing. And my first question to you all is, let's imagine you have access to any marketing data with 100% accuracy. What would you look for? So, who would you like to start?
I'll go ahead. So I would imagine the consolidated data pool bringing in all of the data gathered by the company. That would be customer data, partner data, sales data in one holistic hub of data with privacy and compliance. That would be my go-to as my foundation to everything I'm going to be doing, including AI, which I'm sure we'll talk about later. What conversation is happening without AI these days, right? Obviously. So that would be mine. Think of it as the ocean, just an ocean of data that I can insightfully pull and digest in creation of strategies to align to the right strategy and objectives I need to achieve.
Yes, that's
I would
great.
agree with that too. Deanna, just jumping in here. I think my vision is like my grandmother used to say, how do we all sing from the same hymnal? And so across go to market, whether you're a product leader, sales revenue leader, customer success, or marketing, being able to have a fully connected view of a customer 360 journey, but also there's humans in these organizations and what are they thinking and caring about
Yeah.
in the buying groups that they're in. There's different buyers that have different, as we have different products that we can take to market. And there's different ways that we can help them. So really being able to learn what is the intent data, what are they thinking about, and how can we realize those insights to provide very custom, relatable information as we as marketers can bring that magic to life for them.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and I can possibly add to that. If you look at the data set that you would like to access with true accuracy, it would be great also to see the entire buying cycle, especially with multiple stakeholders that can be involved across the cycle, all the way from influencers and then who's not necessarily ending up as your end client, and having to see how those different interactions ultimately then influence this as well. For our industry, that's really important because we deal with engineers who then specify and recommend products on the high end. They're not essentially the buying customer at the end of the day, but there needs to be a lot of value then added upstream as well. And the more value you add upstream, the more value you then add downstream as well. And the higher quality your sales qualified leads then become, to be able to then add value for the organization then itself. So I would say then if we then figure out how that can exactly work and then gain true insight, we obviously deal with the direct sales force quite a lot, which gives us great insight as well. But we're always interested to see, okay, how that value attribution works. Where do we add the most value and what's the overall effect of
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
And if I could piggyback really again to Christy. Christy, I think you mentioned a very key point. When we look at all of this data, and I'll probably highlight from ours. So I'm an alumni of Microsoft, Intel, a lot of those hardware, software, those components, those ingredient brands that help build solutions for enterprise and partner needs and solutions. So how do we go about that? And why is what you said, Christy, so important? The buying network and those buying groups are so key right now. It's not one decision maker. It's like an average of 12 to 14, according to Forrester research. And that is huge when it comes to the insights and picking up, like you said, those intent signals. That is key. I think we'll expand on that more, but that is what helps us craft what are people looking for? What are the trends of challenges I need to resolve and problems I need to resolve? And how do I then attack my content and go to market strategies and everything else aligned to those signals and that data? So I'm so glad you brought that up. I think we've got some similar things. But okay, so to the fun question, Olga, back to you. Yeah.
Well, and I wanted just to jump in before we kind of move on to our other goodness, but
Yeah.
I liked where Christian was going on the users. And so
Oh,
I think
yeah.
having been at Google Cloud and AWS, there's a lot of different users or developers, whoever you want to call them. They're the people who
that?
hands the keyboards who are using the products. And if you don't have the users using the products and you don't have fanhood in the users,
Right.
an organization's ability for ramp to revenue is not going to look so good. So Sometimes top
Yeah.
to down, we build relationships with CXOs. There's top to top strategic decisions made within a VP or a function head. And then all of a sudden the solution is now pushed into the organization. And I'll just use an example of like, hey, if I was a marketing leader and all of a sudden I want to move from Salesforce Marketing Cloud to Marketo, and my marketing ops teams say, hell no, I don't want to go because I've got 55 certifications and I love the product. It's going to be really hard. So I think as marketers, it's also important to think through the ramp to revenue, but also the users of the products and making sure that we're thinking through not only the buyers, not only the top to top relationships that are important, but also how do we build trust with our users?
Yeah, that's so important as well, especially where we see, and it's actually across every industry. Like you guys deal with slightly different industries that we deal with as well. The more the user sees value in interacting with the product and the value that they experience in the product and apply it to the problems that they solve, right? Ultimately, you'll solve the problems that you're trying to then to solve as a marketer, to create leads, to create value, to grow the sales for your particular organization. But if you really focus in on that particular area, right, where that user has a great experience and he figures out, hey, this is actually amazing, this is what I do, that's so in many cases that's where the organic growth actually starts. That's where the
Yes.
core of this exists, and then it expands from there, and people actually miss that central core part. And as soon as your user experience then starts to degenerate, there's a ripple effect that goes down the entire cycle, and that's not great to see if that happens.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, Dina, you wanted to add something? Yeah, please
No,
go
I was
ahead.
going to say absolutely. That's the magic. And then trust.
Yeah.
Trust. We'll address
Mhm.
that, I'm sure. But absolutely, there's so many components to what that means.
Yeah, so I really love our lively discussion. Yeah, and I would like to jump to some case studies and some practical stories from your experience. Could you please share some case studies where data played a key role in your marketing decision? Maybe some stories from your experience. Would like to share?
I'll kick off with a go-to-market, a new approach we were taking at Intel in this case, and it was to address global system integrator market. How do you, and it's a very different dynamic partner. There are three key objectives when it comes to working with global system integrators. We had to think through how do we address amplification of solutions in a trusted way? How do we drive pipeline that made sense, based on the billable hours and limited time structure of the salespeople for global system integrators? And how do we enable? What does enablement look like? Enabling the sales teams across all of our constituents. So we had that to deal with. And then how do we capture the data, the buying network, the insights? So we have, and in our own case, we had some very fragmented kinds of data pots. So my challenge in the situation here was, how do we build a modernized programmatic go-to-market strategy that can scale, not just with one, but perhaps our top 6 global system integrators? And then how do we adjust and pivot as we need with a common data set? Like, I needed to do that. So those are the challenges. We had de-siloed data, de-siloed teams. We had to de-silo teams internally, rather. There was change management involved. There were still people learning about what is this new approach, this modernized way of going to market. And then, especially when you're dealing with people who feel, I really already know and what I'm doing is working, et cetera. So how do you navigate through all of that? And so the actions we took were enabling and educating internally ourselves, bringing in the agency and the experts to talk about it. We put the structure and the strategy together and educated every single area that we would be talking with and collaborating with, to glue and unite any silo, and giving some role and clarity to our strategy. So we did partner with an agency that brought together what we call the proprietary engine, that brought everything together in as single a hub as we could, with privacy and compliance, GDPR compliance, qualification and validation for any content and information shared, and that would be able to integrate into our systems, our ideal customer profile systems, our Salesforce for sales. And we had some remarkable results with that. So some good success when it came to the KPIs and alignment to our metrics.
I'll dive in here. So both at Google and AWS, the blessing of having a lot of products and solutions to take to market, and really having to fine tune and hone in on what were the solutions in an organization, and who are the buyers and the personas that we're going to use the hands-on keyboard, and being able to kind of triangulate whether you're data analytics or IT or you're developer of applications, very different personas, and you can't have the same conversation with them and what's driving them and what's important to them, whether they're taking product to market, they're supporting an organization, or they're having to provide insights and analytics real time to an enterprise organization. And so worked very closely in both organizations with our go-to-market analytics team, Center of Excellence, to really build out propensity modeling for not only the organization, but the buying groups in each of those teams, looking to see what data we had on them, looking to see, were they a net new customer in that buying group? Because if the analytics team, for instance, at Apple was using us, but the infrastructure team was the Microsoft shop, where was the next area that we could go hunt in? And so we worked really closely to look at both the CRM data, the firmographic data, and then also intent data to create a predictive account scoring model and a scoring model based on the buying group on whether it's a red, yellow, green, where sales can go into, they're going to have a chance of closing, and particularly in a certain buying group versus something else, and who has the highest propensity, and then looking where there's more share of wallet. And we were able to start piloting programs. I love a good pilot with some of those organizations, and built in a few key teams where we had really account-based plans, where we could prove and iterate and fine-tune and then scale that as we took it to market. And then also, and I love a partner, and so who are the partners in those organizations that we needed to pull in, whether it's your traditional VAR, it's an alliance partner, or GSI, in many cases. And so making sure we had that full view, and that helped us to align not only our direct marketing dollars, the sales teams, but also our MDF dollars, and where we could work with our partner ecosystem to really fine tune on where we could pull in a partner to open doors.
Great, thank you for sharing.
And a lot of what we do at Hilti is very much account-based marketing as well. With 34,000 employees, more than half of them direct sales employees as well. We see a lot of customers then on a daily basis, and we need a really good quality pipeline as well, especially where we have really niche solutions and really specialized products, services, and software as well, right? Having the right data to get the right data to be able to get a quality sales leads pipeline down this account-based marketing strategy that we essentially execute and steer is then really important. And then one of the things we worked on recently and still continuously iterate and improve is to say, how do we increase the quality of our sales qualified data, right? These sales qualified leads. If you can increase the quality of those, right, and you can really take advantage of the direct sales force you have, that would be gold. And that's a project that we worked on recently as well. What we started doing is when we realized, because we deal with the construction industry, timelines vary a lot, especially with a construction project and then the timelines around that as well. Where we have different products, those products become relevant along the different cycles of this particular construction project. We then try to manage that complexity, look at the data from our users in our software as well, and then cross-reference that with these construction timelines as well, and started optimizing our CRM system as well to link the specification data that the engineers specify our products with to the buying account-based data that then we have as well, to be able to give those really high quality data to our account managers as well. This required a lot of collaboration between our engineers and account managers as well. And then by analyzing this data and acting on it at the right time, because that was the real quality for our leads, to be able to increase the quality. What is that specific timing point, right, that we can influence and have that lead at that point that is relevant, right? We were able to then do that and deliver much higher quality data to our account managers, and we could see a clear sales boost as a result of that. And it's not a one-time fix. We continuously keep on improving and refining that and enhancing then the lead quality for our account managers. And every iteration keeps on strengthening it as well. And ultimately, we see the effect downstream on the sales as well. What's really important then is, if we build these concepts and we improve this data, it's really important to go to the end user and the customer as well. I was in New York yesterday doing exactly that. Our hypothesis told us, right, that this is real value, right? But what marketers always do, they try and pilot and they try and implement. What we always try and do is, okay, go to the customer and test. You build this hypothesis, but does it add real value for the customer? If it adds real value for the customer, that then is validation of the hypothesis that you built, and it ties into the scalability, and those pilots that you eventually roll out becomes much more valuable as well.
Yeah, for sure. I have a question to you about how you see the biggest changes in B2B marketers use data over the past maybe few years. Has it changed, or it's just nothing changes? Everyone uses data the same way. Yeah, what do you think?
I would jump in to say there is a big shift in terms of data. I think all three of us have identified the biggest shift, which is really looking at, I mean, it's not a linear funnel anymore. It's not linear. We are all experiencing that. It's about the buying network. It's about use of data to capture these intent propensity signals. So I think that's the biggest shift. When I spoke at Forrester's B2B conference last April, one of the biggest shout outs that was being said was the MQL is dead. But what I think they were really saying is a lead isn't just a lead. We can't be that. This marketing has now become revenue marketing, sales, single team, as we were just talking about with sales and product marketing and engineering. And what that means, the MQL is really about what's that buying network and what's that signal that we need to capture and embrace. So I would start my answer by saying that's the shift I'm seeing. That's what I've been trying to do and what I've been advising on in the industry. But then I'll pass it to Christian and Christy too, to see what you're seeing in the shift.
Yeah, I think we are moving to a new motion where, MQLs are just a motion of, it's an activity. It's not the journey. I mean, we all binge watch Netflix. So, it's not a moment of like, we want all information. We have the ability in a digital world to get a lot of information very quickly. So I don't think it's like step 1, step 2, step 3. That's not how customers are looking at information. I think, I'm excited to see really looking at qualified buying groups to understand how many humans in that buying group, as you start to think through the stratification of an account, is, engaged. What's that engagement? What is the level? I think one of the things that I have been very clear with my team is like, it's not just about the leads coming through, is who is the human in that lead that's coming through, or that engagement with the organization. What is the experience you want them to have based on who they are in that buying group? And so really mapping out not only just the who is, but what is the experience we want them to have. And then the next part is really around, marketing qualified accounts. And then based on that buying group, that, and those humans in that thing, we have a marketing qualified account, which is ready to have ongoing conversations. And I also think the other thing that the big shift is most organizations have really moved to a SaaS model. And so thinking through what is the consumption model that's important. That's what one of the things early in my career, was at VMware, and we were shifting from perpetual license to a consumption-based model. That's a shift in how we sell, how we market. And so that's another area of like looking at consumption and that part of, is a user using the products? I talked about that earlier. So I think that's the other part too, is as marketers, how can we help our customer success team? How can we onboard customers using marketing magic? How can we provide digital tools for the users to get them the information that they need? And so that's the third part. And then I think the fourth part is, when we think about all of those roads to market, is how we can build our partner ecosystem more quickly, and using data and being able to surface that to our partners, obviously following GDPR and compliance, but also making sure our partner ecosystem can be tapped into what's happening in our accounts.
Yeah. Now, I want to add on to what Christy is saying on two particular aspects. The first aspect, when she mentioned engagement as well, it's really important to understand, for us especially, your customer engagement strategies. You have more and more data, and your data set just grows. But are the data that you're able to obtain aligning with the strategies of customer engagement and then building value for the customers as well? And are you able then to link that to the impact that you ultimately have to have? Because the data sets grows, but your strategy stays constant, right?
Yes.
Lots of data sometimes can distract us from our actual strategy, and that's what we've seen as well. The more data we have, the more confused we can get as well. So one shift that I've seen is as well just the strategic alignment, right? Having more data, right, can take you on different roads, and then you actually deviate. But if you are able to take that data, right, and then still view that through the lens of the strategy that you execute, whether this is a customer engagement strategy or a sales growth strategy, whatever that particular aspect is, all right? Not to be able to deviate from your strategy based on additional data as well, but just interpret it through the strategy that you actually execute. That's the one thing that I've noticed as well. The second thing Christy also alluded to as well, the SaaS model is becoming very popular as well, right? Because it creates more sustainable business, right? It's not the ones of sale that you have, but you now create more sustainable business, right? But it's still then really important if somebody pays a subscription for a service or a software that you then have to be able to add continuous value to you as well. Are you using the data in a way, if you've shifted to that model, to continuously add value? Because if you don't do that, you start seeing your churn going, right? And you don't want that. Then people are saying, okay, how do we solve our churn? And then churn becomes a focus. But it actually needs to be solved before that, right? If you actually use your data, learn how to better understand your customer or your end user, and then use that data to continuously add value, your churn will sort of solve itself at the end of the day as well. So especially where many companies are becoming SaaS companies or investing more in different services as well, are we using our data as well to continuously add value for this? And those are the two shifts that I'm seeing as well.
Yeah, love it. A lot of valuable insights. And let's jump to the next question. It's more about how you collect data. So there are a lot of sources, and actually, I really love the the idea of Christian that not maybe all of the data sources are important, and it's a lot of data you need to prioritize. And what kind of data sources do you find most valuable for B2B marketing? Maybe first party or third party, and why?
Yeah, let me maybe start on this as well, because we as an organization collect way more data that we are ever able to deal with. If you have that many customer interactions on a daily basis, and you've got a really good CRM system that's able to capture the data, right? You need very good interpretation, and you have the risk as well where those data is interpreted sometimes through the wrong lens as well. We sometimes joke within the organizations, other companies would kill for the data that we ignore. In some cases as well. But then to your question, what sources do we gather, and then where do we find the most value, right? To be able to then look at the sources where it's actually directly through the customer, or it's coming through the customer maybe as a third or second tier connection, to be able to connect to the data as well, where there's interpretation that takes place before the data then actually gets to you. We had an example recently as well where we were trying to upsell some of our solutions as well, and there was a challenge. This, well, the solution doesn't really add value to the customer. And it was interesting because I was really involved in that. I'm like, hang on, no, I don't think I agree. Let me go back. And I tested it in the field a couple of times, and then I looked at, okay, where did the data originate? And there was interpretation then applied to the data as well. And then when it ends up to you as a decision maker, what do we then do with this? You need to realize, okay, as my, let's call it contamination for lack of a better word, as my data being interpreted in a way that maybe changed it from the original intent of how I try to gather the data. How do I balance the data that's then directly gathered from the customer, the marketing data that we then use through social media, or again, how do we then balance that from the user interface data that we get from our customer that actually uses our software as a service or as other solutions as well? How do we combine that together to actually understand the customer? So for me, it's really to understand, okay, where did the data originate from? And depending on where it originated from, you're not going to treat it in exactly the same way. If there's certain interpretations applied to the data, you need to understand, okay, how has that then affected it? And how do you then deal with that?
Yeah, for sure. And data can be not high quality, and interpretation can be very creative as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think this goes back to, I alluded to trust. So I think we need to treat our data with integrity as a business asset, both from protecting it from a performance and brand trust perspective, because over time, you can see that personalization. I love where Christian was going with this. Like you could easily potentially send a message out to a customer who has no interest in a particular upsell or cross-sell
Yeah.
motion. And all of a sudden you're like, I'm not even the person in the organization that would be making that decision. So I think this is one of the things that I think that keeps me up at night is like, where are we going? We have all these great tools that can communicate personalization as we think about a lot of the things that we can do for using AI, but the underlying piece and the foundation isn't correct. And we have not been doing the things to make sure that the data is, is clean and ongoing pieces that were, outdated. What are the data practices? What are the ordinance? How are we taking care of the dirty data to inform it? So I think, from our first party perspective, what's the product usage like working back from a customer? What are the marketing insights that we have? What's in the CRM? We've all been in organizations where sometimes people don't update the CRM with customer insights. We won't say who those wonderful partners are in the organization, but we'll just say, we don't know. When we realize that there's no contacts in a major strategic account in our CRM system. So I think that's one area, the things that we can control. The second part is our third party intent signals, whether you're using a G2 or a third party source or vendors that are out there or demand base, the qualitative and the quantitative insights, but also making sure that those partners are also treating the data with integrity and updating it, and what are their practices. It just takes one false move with a customer to lose trust. It takes a lot to earn trust, but one small false move to lose trust. And so, how can we get that voice of a customer back into our kind of life cycle and infinity that we have with them? But then also, the second part is really important, and I love partners. And so with our partner feedback loop to also help to reveal some of those motivations as well. So when I think about third party, it's the vendors, it's our first party sites, but also what is that partner feedback loop to make sure that we also are able to have that same pane of glass we would want.
Absolutely. And I think I share, Christian and Christy, some of the points you brought up, but what I would do is start with baselining. Where are we today? So how do we know where our needle has moved for whatever our objectives are? So I would start there. And to answer that question, it's both. I think it's both the first party, our own internal data, and third party. In the case of third party, Christy, as you mentioned, it's really important. I mean, the capturing of signals and getting that validation and the qualified data and privacy compliant data is so key. And that happened to be where we didn't have that internally. So that became a reliant hub of data and information for the buyer network, the signals, and where we should intercept. But then there's also finance and sales. And that's where I bring in the information from finance. What are our average deal sizes? What is our current velocity to date? And that's where I was using some of that important information and gluing this together to understand, for a qualified pipeline I'm bringing in at these average deal sizes, how can we then convert to true revenue and hitting the bottom line for contract value and duration? For the velocity, how do I, from a velocity standpoint, shorten that sales cycle time through the way I'm hitting and intercepting signals and helping sales and enabling and helping sales to focus on more hot items than spreading themselves too thin, if you see what I'm saying. So to answer the question, those are the three ways: the benchmarking, the third party, the first party, to really bring the story together, and always keeping the strategy and the pillars of the strategy objectives aligned. And how am I meeting it? Because how many people have we said, people are like, we need this and we need this and we need this, and we become into data ad nauseum that we cannot, like you were saying, Christian, earlier, we have so much data, but this helps us focus, navigate. Actually, I do want to say one quote. This was from my Microsoft days with Satya Nadella. He said, and this was probably very, very true, and all the work we're all doing, if we all, and this is where go-to-market strategists and strategy becomes so important. if we compare ourselves to other companies and assess our success on other companies, comparing ourselves to someone else is insulting ourselves. So that should resonate with everyone as a golden nugget to take away, even personally. Never compare yourself.
That's right.
So look at your company and what you're needing to achieve, and that focus and that trajectory, and stay focused. Yes, we need to adapt and pivot the dials once in a while. But if we try to spread ourselves and go, well, they're doing this, and so we've got to do this, and it will fail.
Yeah, definitely. And let's talk about data analysis and interpretation, because as we already mentioned, it can be creative, and it's important that it's accurate, that you're getting real insights from data. So what is your experience here? How to get real and useful insights from data? Maybe you use some tools for that or some processes. Please share with us.
I think you have to start with a strategic question, Olga. Like,
Mhm.
what is the decision that we're looking to inform? What is the business problem that we're looking to inform, and working back from that? I think then you have to understand where the various areas of data that we're going to have to synthesize across channels, or and then going into the visualization of it. I think that that's important. So one is the strategic question, and then using that data, whether it's in a channel that we're trying to inform, whether we're trying to understand channel efficiency or effectiveness, or whether it's a product component, and we're really trying to understand where's the consumption, and what's the best looking customer look like in these industries, and high consumption, if that's something we're trying to solve. So I think it's asking, what is the strategic question? And then the second part is really thinking through, how do we take the complexity of it, and simplify it into some story, and a story analysis and storytelling. So it then ties back to that business narrative and that question that we're trying to solve. And so how to close the loop. I think sometimes we look at numbers and we don't really dive into the data itself. I'll use that story here, but it's true. I'm getting a lot of data that comes in, and I hate to use the word MQLs, lots and lots of MQLs, and millions of them coming in, and taking a moment to say, hey, this is the human being that I'm trying to reach at this account. Did I actually get the human being, the CIOs, in these target strategic accounts, and actually looking at the data, not at the numbers, and looking at who those people are. So, there's not 20,000 CIOs and the top Fortune 100. There's 100 CIOs, and did I have the right engagement? So I think it's actually diving into the numbers, but actually looking a little bit, doing the double click in the data to also understand, like, was the marketing, if the goal was, I want to drive engagement with 60% of CIOs in 2025, did I do that in the top strategic accounts? And then doing the double click in and saying, wow, yes, I did. And here were the number of engagements. So I think it's the business question that we need to answer, and what are we trying to solve? And then being able to surface that up. And then also being able to surface up, why not? Like, why, what are the factors that we can optimize and improve on as well?
Yeah, makes a lot of sense.
I want to add to what Christy is saying, and I think it's really important that you mention the strategic question from what I want to achieve comes first, and then you start looking at the channel, right? Sometimes, especially when different divisions are primarily responsible for different channels, we get that the other way around, and then that's not the best data insight that we actually get. And that strategic question, by asking, okay, what are we trying to solve? How is it going to be the best way? You gave the example, right? If there's 100 particular people that I want to reach in a very particular position, right? The channel that I'm using to be able to reach them is going to be different to the 100,000 end users that I want to then reach to be able to interpret the data from them. So it's really important then asking that strategic question, what am I trying to achieve? And we try and do the same thing as well, right? Because otherwise you're not getting the right data, and you're not going to be able to make the right decisions, and it's going to be all over the place. So that's just really important. I just wanted to add to what you were saying. We also try and do the same thing, to just say, okay, what is it we're trying to solve, and then get to that.
Yeah,
100%.
I would absolutely agree. Absolutely. Just fundamentally, strategy and what your outcomes are is the focus, or it can go everywhere. I mean, many companies are struggling with just an overload of content creation, thinking that's the way to address the data. Content, let's just create more content. people are drowning in content and information, as we all know. So we did that same thing. We looked at how, when the data is coming in, when we look at the business outcomes, those 3 key objectives I was mentioning earlier in my business case, which was amplification of a solution to the defined industries and audiences we were looking at through the intent signals, that, ensuring we were intercepting the pipeline, and then enablement. We assessed that we needed to use the data, but to produce the top most consumed tools or assets that are trusted in the market. So we did 1-page offering overviews. We did social card postings. We did explainer videos, short 2-minute snippets, short customer pitch decks, and demos. Done. And customer success stories. So these all align to other research. We are seeing third-party research that's saying trust is about, are the analysts. I'm going to an analyst to get data to validate my challenge and my solution that I need to get. So that's where we partnered with analysts in some of the content we developed in those formats that I talked about. And that is so key, because these formats are also scalable across to events, to roundtables, to executive briefings, to ways in which all of the buying networks are consuming this information. So that is kind of how we, from the top down, when we think of outcomes and objectives first, what's the business question? How we then align the assets and tactics and operationalized internally may not be content we need to produce. This might be a small demo. It might be a small, whatever it really ends up that we need to be creatively, or a short explainer video that really addresses the need and intercepts properly. So that's how we went about it. I think the common theme, though, is what Christian, Christy, and I are saying is really start with your desire. What are the business questions and those desired outcomes you're trying to achieve? And then align and operationalize and give clarity to everyone for what that is and what they should be doing.
Yeah. And I would like to jump to the EI topic. We can't ignore it in the modern world. Yes.
No.
Impossible. Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you use AI for data-driven marketing, maybe to, I don't know, to find some insights, or to analyze data or something else? So please share your experience, how you use AI.
I can dive in, because I
Yeah.
think it ties really nicely where Dina was going on, listening to the customer, and same thing with Christian being in New York. One example was we had our CISO sign off on us being able to use some tools as a pilot. So I think depending on where your organization is, making sure as you're pulling new vendors in and tools in, that you have buy-in from your CISO, as well as your CIO, just to make sure that there's compliance and some data information that's there. So I'm going to start with that. So getting the sign off from them to do a pilot with one part of our organization. And one of the parts of the organization was our executive briefing centers that we do both on the road, but also in person. We were able to, with basically the permission of the customers to record those, we were able to, in very quick time, get that feedback and action items back from customers. And we're able to send that back to the product team on what were the most important things that a customer wanted as the next product suite, as they were looking to build out their own products on us. The second part was, as we were looking at building out RFPs or proposals for the next step for the customer, that information was able to be circulated back to both our pricing team, but also to our bid management organization, so that we were able to have a feedback loop rather than them just having to guess. And so I think when you think through that data insight, it's not just always at the front of the funnel, it's also the back end. So being able to realize what is the next step that the customer is going to do. We were able to identify in a couple of cases with customers, what was the first project that we would be able to get out the door this year versus next year, to be able to realize revenue faster. And so I think that that's really important. Again, listening to a customer, where our sales organizations are competent in various things, but to actually the customer, in many cases, into the two areas that I was thinking of, we were able to identify an area where there was a problem that was differentiated in the market. Our competitors weren't even in this space. We were able to solve a customer problem very quickly, and being able to realize ramp to revenue within year and within fiscal year. And so being able to have that feedback loop that goes not only from the seller, but to other parts of the organization, whether it be product, whether it be our bid management organization. And what used to take months and weeks to get those transcripts back to people and the action items and who the owner of it was, it's hours, not days any longer. And I think that was an important thing, so that the next follow-up meeting with the customer could be within days.
Yeah, that's
Christy. Yeah, Christy, I need to mention a statistic I just ran into. It was on the Forbes Insights by Five
Oh.
Trend. It's very much along that. It says the ungoverned or non-governed AI is going to cost B2B companies $10 billion. And there is so much importance to this point you brought up. We also, in using AI, would definitely recommend AI, absolutely. Productivity, time efficiency, and so forth. But we all have to break out of the sea of sameness. And this is where the human gets involved. Every human is accountable for reviewing what that output of the AI is. So that's flag number one, I will always say. The second piece is collaboration with the use of AI. And then I'll talk more tactically. But it was interesting because I was at a roundtable not too long ago, and one of the roundtable members, as we were all talking as leaders around the table, was saying, she said, I think AI is going to silo everybody. It's going to silo us more. And I went, no, I don't think so. I think it's going to force us to come together. And this is another piece of advice I would offer the community is work collaboratively, ensure the reviews are happening together and collaboratively. That will unite you. So it's our responsibilities as leaders that we do that through the use and experiences of AI. But we did use AI for, templatizing and being efficient in messaging. And then the human, we interacted with brand and corporate messaging and ensuring we were still distinguishing ourselves in market for the purpose and objectives needed. So that was number one. And we definitely, another example in the use of AI and different tools. We were using different tools, Copilot, ChatGPT, Gemini, Perplexity, and others. But enablement and the playbooks that, if you need to make them more industry, if you need to localize and adapt, if you need to do it for a persona, training and enablement and upskilling as well, and upskilling in AI. We used AI for that as well. So developing your templates, but please always remember the human element and responsibility we all have to review the outcomes and output. So
Yeah, I wanna add to that. And I recently assisted one of our teams that worked on an AI model that specifically helps answer a question on a platform we have on our website, specifically in this case aimed at structural engineers. And we were training a model to be able to take into account previous questions that were asked over the couple of years. And AI is obviously really good at combining the data as well, but not forgetting the human element. Coming from a structural engineering background, in this case, I worked with the team as well to see, okay, what will be the answer that this AI then spits out for a structural engineer? And then we said, okay, well, this is not going to be sufficient. But if you don't have that human element and that ungoverned AI now ends up being the customer interface, you're going to have a big problem, right? So remembering that human element, because you as a human can understand the customer, is really important then to have the right people that has the customer perspective and that strategic perspective as well. I saw a very interesting study as well that says, okay, well, AI great at productivity, not so great at strategy and aligning with strategy yet, right? So that's also really important, right? So AI can help you a lot with productivity, consolidate data, but that human element, our ability to think, align with our strategy, understand the stakeholder, connect the dots a little bit better. I think if you only rely on AI for that, and you don't have the right people, right governance, right oversight, there can be some concerns there as well. So agree with Dina as well. So use AI in the right way, but with, as Christy also referred to, the governance as well, have that in place and don't expect AI to replace that. And I'm also a little bit skeptical. I say, yes, AI might replace some, but the ability to really think and connect the dots as well. That's still your responsibility.
Yeah, and I agree with you too, Christian, checking the sources. Same thing with Dina, like the sources are important. Double clicking in. I think what I'm most excited about is being able to understand quickly on if I ask the question across Gemini or across ChatGPT or even Copilot. I love where Dina was going with what are the top 7 things that CIOs are caring about or organizations are caring about. Being able to ask that question based on the persona, who they are. If you're a CFO, what's the thing? What are the topics that are resonating with you? Having done that exercise, taking early things to market when I was at Riverbed, it was in an era where organizations were having to do more with less and really changing that narrative and all the content that we had to kind of go behind that groundswell and that narrative and how we could help a customer do more with less. So whatever that next topic is, whatever the next topics are for 2026,
Yeah.
I think that's really will be important, and how we're able to curb our content and go faster with that to adopt it to that persona and what they care about. It could be a minor tweak to that, but again, like making sure we check the sources. Back in the day, what are the top headlines that Wall Street Journal is writing about for CIOs or the CFO, or what are the headlines that people are talking about if you're on a particular magazine or watering hole. I think that AI will help us to inform and surface that up. The more and more contributed content from validated sources is out there. But I think it's also important as people are looking at their AEO strategies that there is insight and data behind the information that's being written about, and it's seated in real truth. And so when I think about that data, it's like, hey, it's really important to look at the double click on the source, because you may find out that source is not credible, or there may be some underlying thing that's not correct. So I think as things get improve, just making sure we're continuing to validate it. And at the end of the day, we are all accountable for what we're bringing to market, and not saying it's, the AI messed up. It's really the ownership falls on us.
Yeah, thank you. Important thoughts. Yeah, I think, and also about data validation with AI and human in the loop and human on the top of it. Yeah, it's very important. And I think that Christy also mentioned a little bit about predictive analytics with AI. I think it's also a great scenario how you can use AI. And the final question at the end of our conversation will be about actually gut feeling. So because it's sometimes of course you have a lot of data, but sometimes data can be misleading, and you have your own intuition as a B2B marketer. Have you been in this kind of situations when, for example, data says one thing and you feel something else and you handle it somehow? So what do you think about it? Or it's impossible?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to start. So we were in a similar situation recently, looking at data from how users interface with our software and the particular data behind that as well, right? If you're looking at the data from a certain perspective, you would say, okay, well, this doesn't really add value to the customer. But then you understanding the customer quite well, you have that red flag that says, hang on, there's something not right there, right? There's something not captured. The IT team built us this great model, right, that then captures the data. Now we're interpreting the data, but now the conclusion tells us, okay, this particular aspect adds no value to customers. That was a flag to me to say, that's impossible, right? It's something that we need to test further, dig into, see what elements are not connected, and then understand that a little bit better. But just taking that data then at the face value, say, yeah, okay, well, the conclusion probably makes sense. We need to kill that. That probably is a red flag in that particular case. I think just that human intuition, right, understanding, right, and not taking data at face value, and that's what we as experienced marketers, I think, add the most value to, right, to be able to see, okay, well, hang on, right, let's look at this more in detail, maybe, right, I'm not saying it, but let's investigate further.
And to piggyback on that, I think it gets to a triangulation, I think. Again, going back to our strategy. So we have our strategy. We have the data that's giving us some of these factual nuggets. But if you find there is a gap, or you see that I need to continue, my company has a corporate strategy of pushing on this path or this product for earnings or whatever the case might be, we need to think of that component as well, and graciously pull that in to our data estate, if you will. So I would say it's data can be telling us one thing. There is also our corporate strategy that's telling us another. And there might be what I would call the geographic entities that are presenting gaps that we need to bring in, because we might be looking at data as a whole and going, we really need to be honing in on these other facets of data in EMEA or in Americas, et cetera. So that's how I would look at it, in terms of validating data, so to speak. Data is data. Quantitative data is quantitative data if it has a good margin of error, good confidence interval. But so I will never counter data when it's truly quantitative, but I will look at it to assess with these other variables to make it comprehensive for how I need to go use it. So.
Makes sense. Yeah. Thank
I
you.
want to just add one more thing as well, which also relates to this, and we haven't talked about that a lot, but it's something that we deal with as well with a complex sales cycle, is the right attribution, right? So I looked at a data set recently that added attribution, and at the end point you have the value that's being attributed, and that was a flag for me to say, okay, well, I know the customer, I know the buying cycle, that attribution applied over the cycle is a little bit of a question. There's obviously complex analytics and everything that went into building these attribution models as well. But I think for marketers as well, understanding that as well, because sometimes the IT teams and the people building this, right, as one perspective as well, that ends up in our reporting, that gets resources allocated for the organization to certain things as well. If these attribution models, right, don't take the right perspective as well. And I think us as marketers have a great opportunity as well to just give insight on those as well. So you'll see this, but if the number is not on the right scale that you expect it to be, you need to look at that and realize, hang on, am I assigning the right attribution to the right point of the cycle? And is that actually the value, or is it something else? So that's also something that I recently encountered where we need to say, okay, is this something we need to look deeper into as well? And I think that's also a great value marketers can add in the right attribution.
Yeah, I like the attribution part, Christian. I also think that if data has also helped surface when there's been some stickiness or issues that our sellers have a hard time from a process perspective, being able to qualify an account or being able to progress things ahead, or how are we thinking through the process of, whether it's a lead qualification or account qualification, where there was some challenges for them to kind of progress the things. And again, I think Dana was talking about enablement. So I think as we think through the strategy, what are we looking to do? What is the data we want? Are we also able through data to be able to service up where there's some areas where things are hitting roadblocks in an organization? And most recently, was able to identify that there were some roadblocks that were from our process and our systems and tooling that weren't not making it easy for our sellers to progress or open an opportunity, or create a new opportunity on an account. And so it was breaking not only our attribution model, but it was also breaking a process where we had a lot of duplicate accounts. And so I think it really fine-tuning with the sales operations and go-to-market team is like, what are the processes that we have? What does it mean for our sellers? What does it mean for the customer experience along the way? But that was able to surface up kind of a gut where I was like, wow, we did this thing that was high value, but I never saw any conversions. And then you go look at the data and you're like, oh, there's 44 Coca-Colas. Why did 44 Coca-Colas and, master accounts get created in the system? And it's happened in multiple organizations that I've been in. And so I think it's, making sure that we have a locked data, who can create accounts, but also who can create and provide the attribution needed back into those accounts as they go to close it. So, I think it's also important to look at what is the business process and systems that we need to have in place too, because we will lose that attribution on the back end. And so for me, data was able, my gut check was like, that doesn't seem right. Like, I know who those human beings were. I know these were the most important accounts. And it was 6 months later, there was nothing there. And so I think it's just looking at helps to surface where sometimes we have an opportunity to optimize and make process improvements and make it better for our sellers and make their experience better. There was an archaic kind of process that we had in place that I was like, wow, this is a lot, like 10 steps that somebody has to do every single time. That's not efficient.
Right. Thank you so much. I was coughing at the end. Sorry. Thank you. Yeah, for your very valuable insights. And it's just impressive, your practical experience and what you've shared, case studies. So thank you so much. It's very valuable, precious information, I think, for B2B marketers on the market. So thank you. Thank you so much for your time and insights.
Thank you for having us, Christian and Christy. Great to meet you.
You too. Nice meeting everyone.
Yeah.